I'm Peter Vermeulen. I live and I work in Belgium. I work both for Autism Centraal, which is a center where we try to translate scientific knowledge about autism into practical strategies. And my other half time is working for Autism in Context, which is, let's say, my little own company, where I do the same, but then outside of Belgium. And I've been working in the autism field for 30 years, and in the beginning I was like everybody else. I wanted to treat autism, I wanted to educate the children that I diagnosed to be as independent as possible, to increase their levels of functioning, until I noticed that some of them, later in life, were independent but not happy, and some of them were not independent but very happy. And that's when I started to think of happiness as another thing that is quite important. When it comes to research in autism, happiness has only recently entered the field. Before we were actually also thinking about the well-being of autistic people, but from a negative point of view. So we were researching mental health issues like anxiety, depression, and so on. Now, that was a big step forward, because for the first time we realized that maybe autism is not the biggest problem, but the anxieties and the worries and the lack of well-being. But I think it's time now for research to move on to the next phase and approach well-being from a positive psychology point of view, which means looking into what makes autistic people thrive, what makes autistic people feel good. And I think in that research we'll not have to do very special things, because many things that make autistic people happy are the same things that make other people happy. So it's time to get out of the autism bubble and start using what is already known about well-being in general and bring that knowledge into the autism field. I think that is, important to know about well-being and happiness is that there are two aspects of it. One is having a pleasant life. That's doing joyful activities, having no stress, no pain, being relaxed, and so on. Now, this is an important part of having a good life, but the thing is that's very futile when you compare it to the biggest source of happiness, which means having the idea that your life is meaningful, that you mean something to other people. So having a good day is okay, but you know, we have good days and bad days. What we know that people who are most happy are the ones who have good and bad days, but they have the stable, meaningful life. Because if you have a meaningful life, then you can have bad days, because you know, you're not out of balance. So the pleasant things are, well, they are okay, but they are less stable than the meaningful life. That means we need to think about how can we make life more meaningful for this child. And meaningful could be meaningful in many different ways. It could mean that I do things that other people like. It could mean that I'm liked by other people. I know that Ambitious about Autism works on gratitude, being kind to other people. You know, that's what we know is the biggest source of having a meaningful life, being kind to other people, because it returns back in tenfold. For many years we have been focusing in education on teaching autistic children and youngsters all kinds of skills that we thought would be necessary to lead an independent and happy life. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, because every child has to learn a lot of things to navigate the world and to survive a world that is not always friendly. But what I think is there's need for a new balance here, because the balance was too much, or the focus was too much, on teaching skills, and then we'll see whether you become happy or not. I think people can only learn new skills when they feel good. So maybe the primary focus should be on well-being, and once a child feels secure, safe, then the child is strong enough to be challenged. And so in that way, we still should work on functional skills. It's not, I'm not saying leave them out of the treatment plans or the education plans, but I would say take them as the second step in the teaching process, because nobody learns when they are stressed. Being ambitious about happiness means that you're not satisfied when there are no mental health issues. A lot of people think, okay, when a child with autism is not showing any challenging behavior, when he doesn't complain about anxiety or low self-esteem, then it's okay. No, it's not. Well, it is not bad, I would say, but it's not good enough. Being ambitious means that you want to go much further, and then it says we are not satisfied with children who do not show any signs of negative feelings, but our ambition reaches much farther into we want this child to be telling every day that life is good, not great, because life is not great, but good, and that that child every night goes home with a feeling this was another good day. And that's being more ambitious than saying it was not a bad day today. When I think about resilience, then I think about the brain as being a muscle. How can you become a better athlete? By having some pain, by moving the boundaries every day a little bit, not too much, because then you are injured. So we should do the same on a mental level. We should challenge children to move the boundaries a little bit, and that's going to be a little bit stressful, that's going to be a little bit painful in mental terms, but that's how you build up resilience, just the way we build up physical strength by exercising. If you just sit there and think about, okay, I'm going to be stronger, you won't be stronger. You need to exercise your brain as if it were a muscle, and that's how you build up resilience. And I know that parents and teachers sometimes are a bit reluctant to stress a child because they think he's autistic, let's make it safe and let's be autism friendly. And that's okay, that's okay to take that into account, but sometimes you really need to challenge children, but just enough. I can understand that parents and staff members sometimes hesitate to challenge children because it shows actually that they are concerned about the well-being. So in a way, that's a very positive attitude. But then you need to know that you could easily end up in overprotecting children without knowing. And overprotection is, sorry to say that, but it's a kind of abuse. Because you take away from the child the chances to become a stronger person. So therefore, you need to put aside the idea that you're harming children by challenging them. The fact that you are concerned, to me, is a kind of, not a guarantee, but almost a guarantee that you won't challenge the child too much. So in that way, it's okay to be concerned. One thing to do, and one important tip is for staff, I think, is you can only do that when you are relaxed yourself. The moment you are concerned about the child, that's not a good moment to start challenging a child. You can only challenge when you are relaxed yourself. So it's like, in an airplane, put the oxygen mask on first before you put it on a child. So think about your own well-being as a staff member. If you are feeling good, then you will be more relaxed, and then you will be able to challenge the child because you are so secure that you know, I can handle this. I can create a safe environment to challenge this child. I think autistic children have the same need for belonging and being liked by other people. The only thing is that they don't often communicate it in a way that other people can see the need for belonging, but they do. So building up a good relationship is extremely important also because that creates the safety where you can challenge children. You can only challenge them when they know I'm safe with that person. So therefore, building up a good relationship is kind of the soil where you put the seeds of your teaching and your challenging later on. What is important to know, however, is that building up a relationship with an autistic person, the first and most important thing there is that you become very predictable as a person. Being nice is not good enough. Saying every day, I like you, you're nice, is okay, but for autistic brains, they want to be sure that you will not do anything unpredictable. So being predictable and clear in your own behavior is kind of the source of a good relationship with autistic people, but they need you and a good relationship to be able to jump into the water. When talking about having a meaningful life, another thing that is important is that people need you, and that you have something to offer to other people. Now, nowadays, I often hear these stories about Einstein being autistic and Mozart, which creates this false idea of every autistic child has exceptional abilities and that we need to look for these exceptional abilities. Well, the majority of the people, whether they have autism or not, don't have any exceptional abilities. But that does not mean that you don't have strengths, things that you know how to do and that other people need or appreciate that you can do. So there are children who are making good pizza. Well, I love children who make pizza. You know why? Because I love pizza. So this is something that we should foster. We should stop looking for exceptional abilities. We should stop comparing autism to, you know, these big talents. We should start looking for more common things, but that are valuable. For everyone like me who loves pizza, people who can make a good pizza, they are the ones that I like. And you don't have to be an Einstein or a Mozart then. There's this new term neurodiversity, which in one way I like because it stresses the fact that we are all unique, that we all have different brains. What I don't like is that we start making groups of people and saying the autistic, the non-autistic, the neurotypical, the autistic. You know, I think there's only one label that is important to me, and that's our first names, our name. And then we have all different labels. So I like to think of Neuroharmony as a world wherein diagnostic labels are less important than all the other labels you have. There's just one of the many labels you have. Rather than hyper-focusing on the diagnosis, I don't like the distinction neurotypicals versus neurodivergent people. You know, we're all neurodivergent because who has a typical brain? I don't think there's somebody who is neurotypical. So let's not make groups of people, let's not divide, let's take every unique person as a unique person, and then, this is the idea of neuroharmony, every single note is different, is sounding different. Where is your place in the music piece? And finding that particular place, that particular spot is important. And of course the diagnosis is one of the many labels that will define your place in the music place, but not the only one. So therefore, I hate things like, what are good jobs for autistic people? I think that's a silly question. Or that everybody with autism should be in the IT world. No, I know people with autism who love being out in nature. Okay, let's find your unique place in society where you are in nature and doing something in nature that other people value. For more than 30 years, I've been writing books and giving presentations on how different autistic people are. And I still think it's very important to know how an autistic brain works and how autistic people experience the world in a different way. But I've come to the point where I think, okay, this is important, but let's not forget that maybe 90% of the autistic brain is similar to non-autistic brains. There's only a couple of things that makes autism specific, but all the rest, like emotions, for instance, I don't think that if an autistic person is sad, that this is a complete different kind of sadness than non-autistic people. So maybe it's also time to look for what we share. And, you know, worries, anxieties, but also positive feelings like pride and you know, all these feelings are human feelings and we share them. So maybe it's time to start from those common experiences, because then we're not different anymore. We are experiencing the same, and I think it's time to do that as well.